The first time I got up in the middle of the night at like 3 in the morning and I wanted to get high. And I left the house and went to the nearby guy on the corner and I stole some crack and went to, a trap house, where people are in there getting high and smoke my crack, and I got back to the house. And when I went to the bathroom, because it makes you want to use the bathroom, right?
Okay.
I had this vision of myself being this strung out crack on the street, begging for money. It's just like this flash came across me. And I was like, hell no, excuse me. I was like, no, that's not going to be me. And I fell on my knees right there in the bathroom and begged God to take that from me. And if he did, I would never do it again. And I would say about 2 weeks after that, the desire for it just went away. And I never did it ever since then.
Well done, man.
Yeah, well, glory be to God, because I asked for it and I saw myself slipping into wanting it, because I
Yeah.
left my house by myself.
Falling in love.
No one else
You're
was with
falling.
me. I went and looked for it at 3 o'clock in the morning and went to the corner and scored and went to a trap house where I didn't know anyone else. It's just a bunch of drug dealers and I'm in there smoking with them, and when I went back home, I realized what I was doing. I was like, what are you doing right now? You really about to go down this road, And I was like, no. And I just put it into it and I prayed about it and gave it to God. And about 2 weeks later, it just went away.
Nice. Did you mention sex addiction as well?
Sex addiction also started very early. Back in the day, Penthouse and Playboy was the biggest things, as far as magazines. And Playboy was the first to come out with, video,
Okay.
on cable, Cox Cable or what have you. Playboy would put out, pornography movies. And so that was my first exposure. And then a friend of mine, I was a teenager again, about 17 years old, dropped out of school. And I always hung out with older guys because I've always been a tall guy. I'm 6'8", and so I've always looked older than what I am. And so
Okay.
I hung out with guys in the neighborhood who are much older than me. And another friend of mine introduced us to a pornography tape, VHS tape,
Okay.
and put this tape in, and then it was just raw, and then I was just like, would watch porn like it's a soap opera, one after another after
Yeah.
another. And I was 17 years old when I first was exposed to that. And then throughout, my adulthood, I would look at porn, on my own, especially when it was readily available on internet for free. You could just look at it, And then that addiction as well, I don't even remember when that began. When I decided to stop doing it, it just happened. I think it just became redundant and
Mm.
it wasn't fulfilling anymore. It just wasn't doing it anymore. I guess because I never really intentionally had to fight from it. It just sort of
Slipped
just
through.
went away.
Yeah.
I was no longer.
Okay.
I was just no longer interested in watching
Ah.
porn anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds like your consciousness and your awareness has just left, just just risen.
yeah, it just wasn't serving its purpose the way it used to. Because like I said, it was redundant. Like you've seen it, right? I mean, I've seen I don't know how many episodes of different porn, and it's just.
Yeah, it's reminding me of when you grow up, like you're in love with cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
and then at a certain age, you get talking to like women, and you get like attracted to women,
Mm-hmm.
and it's women,
Mm-hmm.
and then you might move to substance,
Mm-hmm.
So it's stages and stages of life, eh?
Yes, yes, yes. You know, and when it came to women, I never really had a problem with women, even though I felt a little insecure
Mm.
in myself. I didn't think I was a good looking guy. I didn't think I was
Mm.
the pretty boy kind. You know what I mean? Because I hung out with a friend of mine who was the pretty boy
Mm.
kind, and we would go clubbing and stuff together. And girls would ask him for his phone numbers. Girls would send him drinks, and I had to work for it. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
so I was like, I must not be good looking. So I had
Yeah.
this, this
Self-esteem
insecurity.
damaged.
Exactly, so.
Mm.
But he used to tell me, man, this girl's checking you out, man. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
So I didn't really believe in myself and picking up on girls, even though I didn't really have a problem with it.
How have you grown and faced that like self doubt?
Oh yeah, totally.
How what sort of epiphany moments have you had, like an epiphany moment, or have like you gained some knowledge that has like you've just like been able to like it's not
Well, at this
it's not,
stage in my life, I'm celibate and I'm comfortable
oh
in my celibacy.
wow.
Because I've been through relationships, I've been through girls. I've done it. I've been in orgies. I've been to
Mm,
swinger clubs. I've had friends with benefits. And three or
yeah,
four of them at one time, and they all know that I'm seeing them. Like I've I've done it.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And it's all vanity. It just don't mean
yeah,
anything to me anymore. I've really sown my royal oats.
yeah,
And I've
yeah,
done all that could be done. And it's
yeah,
like
wow.
now I've gotten to the other side of it all, and I look back and I go, what the hell was I doing? So it doesn't make any sense to me
Yeah,
anymore. So I'm desensitized to a lot of things because to me it's foolish now. I see it as foolishness. Very
mm,
stupid to put myself. I have had myself in those positions, but I'm also grateful for the experiences
yes.
because I can speak to them. And I
Celibate in Pattaya,
yes,
Thailand.
very
Incredible.
interesting, very
Very
interesting.
rare, sir.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
rare.
yeah.
How long have you been celibate?
For 6 months now.
6 months.
So I
Like,
just went through a divorce last year. Last February of last year,
mm,
my divorce was final. And
Thai lady or
no,
you,
she's Mexican, from
Mexican?
Mexico,
Okay.
actually.
How long?
And I really, really did not want to divorce my wife. I was really fighting for my marriage, but it was a very toxic,
Mm.
very very toxic relationship. She's a narcissist. There's a
Mm.
lot of history with her. With her mom was a witch. Practicing witch.
Oh, really?
And
Wow.
her
Oh,
sisters are practicing witch today. And so she has a background of witchcraft in her family, but she's the complete opposite. But it's like generational curses been chasing her. Something doesn't want her life to be happy. I think that her mother and even her sister, who hates her, is praying against her life, on the dark side of things, because there are things that happen with her that just makes no sense. It just doesn't add up. And I've encountered demon exposure with her, me being a minister and a man of God, and when I married her is when I decided to come out of my backslidden state back to the faith because I was backslidden away from my faith for 20 years.
okay.
For 20 years, I was like, Lord, I can't do this. I'm not doing this. You say be hot or cold. At least I can be obedient to one. And I went cold into the world and really just was having a great time. I was that prodigal son, just doing whatever I want to do,
Okay. Ah.
and but still loving on people. And it was interesting that even when I was in that state, because I wouldn't minister to people or share anything about what I knew because I've been studying as I told you since I was very young.
Mm.
So I had a lot of biblical knowledge in me, a lot of psychology knowledge about human behavior and stuff. And so when I was out in the world, I would not counsel or minister to anyone unless they asked me a question.
Ah.
If they asked me a question, I was charged to give the answer.
What did your life look like? What throughout that period?
Which period?
Throughout that 20 years of you said you was out there in the world.
Well, let
What
me
was you?
back up a bit. And so, um, being in New Orleans, I left New Orleans. I was there for 30 years. I became a truck driver,
Mm.
and I traveled all over America driving trucks. And I got married to my first wife, and then that didn't work out. And we moved to Texas, and I left her in Texas, and I moved to California. You know,
Okay.
After my first marriage is where I became angry with God, angry with life.
Bitter.
I became bitter, frustrated, confused about a lot of things.